Hey, you geeks, and happy holidays! While I was at Dragonsteel Nexus, I got the opportunity to live out my Santa Land diary, fears, and be a misting elf for Mistborn Santa, which got me wondering, why does the cosmere lack that quintessential Christmas-like holidays? Apart from, I guess, Light Day and Koloss Head Munching Day, that is tomorrow?
Howdy ho, it's Weasel Stomping Day!
The answer was easy enough. Holidays are weird and storming difficult to incorporate neatly into a story. For stories, unlike reality, are a curated set of occurrences that are structured so as to support a message, the plot. Holidays carry their own lore, world building, and requirements that may or may not uphold the story. So when authors include them in stories, it is in a very select and careful sort of way. In this video, we will discern how the greats like Tolkien, Lewis, Jordan, and even some Sanderson did find time to incorporate their holidays and explain how it did or didn't work for epic fantasy. Holidays set the scene. The Lord of the Rings begins with Bilbo's birthday party. While not a normal holiday for most people, Bilbo has bigger and grander plans for his 111th.
Half the Shire's been invited, and the rest of them are turning up anyway.
Other birthdays pass in Lord of the Rings without much fanfare, but Bilbo's 111th is chosen as its beginning because it sets the Shire alight in a most memorable and, even for its inhabitants, magical way. This is how our heroes will recall the Shire as they go forth to their adventures and unpleasant journeys. It also marks the beginning of the plot momentum, for it is at the 111th birthday that Gandalf is first forced to reconcile that his friend is old, and yet
You haven't aged a day.
Then, to put the real icing on the cake, Bilbo performs the sort of party trick that Gandalf can no longer ignore and write off as mere fancy. I don't think it's a coincidence that Tolkien established as part of the tradition of the birthday holiday that this is when the birthday hobbits gives gifts to other people. So it is really in keeping with this tradition that Bilbo can find it within himself to give the ring to Frodo and be the only person in Middle-earth history to give up the ring. The holiday carries that sort of narrative persuasive weight, in addition to, of course, a scary wizard looking over your shoulder. Thus, Tolkien is able to create a little holiday with a little bit of world building that does so much to move the story, character, and themes forward in Lord of the Rings. Similarly, Jordan, and intentionally too, by the way, uses a similar device with Beltane and the Wheel of Time. Beltane isn't too difficult a concept for Earth readers to pick up, as we're vaguely familiar with it as a spring festival where in the Two Rivers it follows that people will drink and dance and release a badger on the village green, as one does. It's also a time we learn for the town council to get a little less crotchety and invite strangers into town, gleemen and fireworks, which incidentally also brings an Aes Sedai and her warder and Trollocs. Thus, Robert Jordan shows how bringing in strangers into your fold brings changes, and how uncomfortable the main characters are with that as they face more and more strangers and more changes along their very, very long journey in the Wheel of Time. But before this journey officially starts, Rand sees a rider on the road into town, and he is the only one to see it. His father Tam does not. And Rand, for the first time, feels foolish, like he is seeing the world different from everyone else, and he feels ostracized. Though he does later learn that Matt and Perrin have also seen the rider, they don't feel comfortable bringing it to their father's attention until it's absolutely necessary. Their fathers have actually gotten together without the boys and made a decision to believe them, but in a very low-key sort of way. This spells the recipe for how every single problem will be ignored, underplayed, and avoided until the absolute last minute for the entire Wheel of Time. Thus, we see how Robert Jordan truly learned from Tolkien at how to maximize a holiday to begin a simple story. Sanderson does not use this recipe, and here's why. No holidays in hell. Unlike Tolkien and Jordan, Sanderson has evolved the genre to start their characters outside of their known world and put them in their own personal hell. As we see with Raoden in Elantris on Sanderson's page 1. Chapter 1. Prince Raoden of Arelon awoke early that morning, completely unaware that he had been damned for all eternity. Sanderson goes there again in Mistborn, where the premise is the bad guy won, and now in their own damnation of sorts, the hero's best goal is to pull a little heist and steal a little bit of precious metal. Likewise in Stormlight Archive, where the fact that humanity has been condemned from heaven and sent forth to Roshar is a fact of history, and even as recently as the Sunlit Man, where it begins with Nomad's condemnation. Chapter 1. Nomad woke up among the condemned. Likewise, Warbreaker begins on the day that Ciri's country is preparing to condemn their beloved princess to the wrath of an angry foreign god. And even if the puritanical followers of Astra had festivals, they aren't going to be celebrating on that day, even if the wrong princess gets sent instead. Likewise, Yumi faces a similar problem. She, as a Yokihiro, gets to commune with the spirits on a daily basis. So for her, every day is a holy day, and none of them are worthy of her wasting her time with something like a royal festival.
You said festival. No! You are thinking about going to the festival.
But the beginning is not the only place authors have been known to throw holidays into the mix. Lewis is, of course, very fond of holidays as experience points. I find it intriguing that Christmas itself, although a beginning in the Christian mythology, rarely starts any fantasy work, except for maybe the Nutcracker. When it appears in epic fantasy as itself, it appears as a way for our heroes to get the tools they will need to complete their journey.
I wonder who gave it to you. There was no name. It just said, use it well.
Of course, maybe it is because Christmas itself starts such a specific story that it can hardly be used to support any other. And even in the middle of a story as a mere power-up, it can sometimes be considered out of place, and therefore only appears in what contemporary readers would term soft magic systems and soft-built magical worlds. As Tolkien, the preeminent hard world builder, was famously critical of Lewis's choice to put Father Christmas in Narnia. Aslan, the fauns, the White Witch, Father Christmas, the nymphs, and Mr. and Mrs. Beaver had quite distinct mythological or imaginative origins. Tolkien thought that it was a terrible mistake to put them together in Narnia, a single imaginative country. The effect was incongruous and, for him, painful. Scenes in the middle of the story should be helping further immerse the reader in their mythical world. So throwing Christmas in there might take the reader out of it, as Christmas carries on so much mythological baggage. We take for granted that it occurs on December 26th, and yet other holidays like Hanukkah or Lunar New Year happen on different days in the Gregorian calendar. Yet I would challenge you to think of calendars not as a unit of time, but of location. A calculation based on the placement of the stars and the sun and the moon and the other planets on how long it takes the Earth to go around the sun. Therefore, the differing dates of the various holidays come about because they are different calculations of how long that journey takes. Tolkien knew what was up when he wrote his Appendix D, giving not only each of his races a distinct calendar, but some subcultures between them, and these have all been living in the same approximate geographic location on the same planet since the Third Age for all of their history. Yet they, unlike Narnia, could not agree on when to celebrate their winter, their feast, as it were. Which is why Jordan and then Sanderson after him followed suit in avoiding a mid-story gift-giving power-up as a way of growing their characters. For Sanderson specifically, I am reminded of a question I received at my panel on faith and religion in the cosmere. Someone asked me and my fellow panelists which planet in the cosmere would be the hardest for us to practice our given faith. I responded that without certain other people, if I was traveling alone, it would all be a wash. And then I got on the plane and began to realize that even on the most Earth-like planet of the cosmere, Scadrial, there is no moon. So if I were to say, calculate the date of Easter, the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox, of course, I couldn't even do that on Scadrial because there is no moon. There is the Stormlight Archive's use of light day, which is calculated very efficiently by when it rains for a very long time and then stops, as that is really the only kind of solid calculation someone living on Roshar could make. Now, light day as a mid-plot development in The Way of Kings doesn't give Kaladin a nice present power-up. Rather, he gets to see his brother get drafted, and then he...
I volunteer as tribute!
On Light Day in The Way of Kings, we don't see any magical gifts be given to Kaladin that will help him resolve the plot later, but we do see his desire to protect, which will come in handy later, and this event helps us better understand it. Getting to the resolution of fantasy books, Light Day does return again, and it does appear in the more common epic fantasy trope of Holiday as final boss. When holidays come in at the end of their given epic fantasies, they come in two distinct flavors. We will deal with the first one much more thoroughly because the second one, there do be spoilers. Firstly, we can see holidays as a creation of chaos and confusion that the heroes must overcome in order to meet and face their final battle. In the Wheel of Time, Lord of Chaos specifically, Perrin has to overcome the insanity that is Kyrienen's Feast of Lights in order to eventually save Rand. It was the first day of the Feast of Lights, the shortest day of the year, the last day of the year, and the city celebrated in ways Perrin could have never imagined. There would be dancing in the Two Rivers, but this? The Kyrienans seemed determined to make up for a year of staid reserve in 2 days of the feast. Here, Robert Jordan doesn't bother to explain the deep world-building significance of these days because our perspective characters do not understand. They are not supposed to understand, and that is the point. The theme of the Wheel of Time is how these heroes are stuck as fish out of water in strange new scenarios and them forcing to cope with that. Having people dress up like birds and drink just is something one has to deal with on occasions, and you don't ask why, especially if you're Matt. Intriguingly, Sanderson actually deploys the Weeping and eventually Light Day in a similar context at the ends of Words of Radiance. Unlike the Wheel of Time, where the adversary is working with others, it's always Kaladin versus the forces of nature and the divine, which is what the Weeping, in essence, is. For as we approach the impending Sanderlanche of Words of Radiance, our fears as readers grow as we see them run out of Stormlight, which we understand to be a bad thing for superpowers. Too long without a high storm, Dalinar thought. Even the gems in the Lethe spheres, cut with facets and so able to hold light longer, had almost all failed by this point of the Weeping. The larger gemstones might last another week or so. They had entered the darkest part of the year, the time when Stormlight did not shine. Thus it is on the last day of Renarin's countdown, 2 days before Light Day, almost as far from any conceivable source of stormlight one can get, that Sanderson puts his epic battle that requires stormlight, so conveniently a high storm appears. And Kaladin also receives his magic sword, in a way because of his oaths as the readers understands them, and not because of the magic of the season of the Weeping. Let me know down in the comments, do you think Kaladin reaching the third ideal and getting a sword counts as an early Light Day present? Or perhaps Koloss Head Munching Day, analog on the wrong planet, celebrated by non-Koloss people? Finally, there's the other way that epic fantasies often incorporate holidays into their endings, which is the holiday to commemorate the outcome of the final battle of their story. Tolkien, of course, pioneered this when he set the Gondorian New Year on their March 25th, the day on which Frodo destroyed the ring. This isn't quite true for Robert Jordan, as he intentionally rewrote history from being a line to a circle, a wheel, where what comes after is just as important as what came before because it's the same. Knowing that, it follows that the wheel itself intends that after Rand does his thing, that a fourth age begin. However, you're going to have to read the Wheel of Time itself to figure out if that actually happens. And if you want to find out if Sanderson uses this technique in his own books, then I guess you'll just have to read and find out now, won't you? Thank you all for watching. I hope you are having a marvelous December and that you are having or will have happy holidays as you celebrate them. I may take the next 2 weeks off to celebrate my own and hope to see you back here in January. Thanks for watching. Bye! Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more.